The 2023 NFL Draft is behind us. Tonight, we look at the best team hauls from each division, and we've got some trending numbers from the 2023 NFL Draft. All that and more on tonight's Draft Countdown podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's edition of the Draft Countdown podcast. I'm your co-host, Brian Bosarge, joined as always by my co-host, Shane P. Hallam. Shane, we are 357 days, 22 hours, 58 minutes, and 22 seconds away from the 2024 NFL Draft.
Yeah, we went strong 16-plus hours of streaming over the weekend on this draft and breaking down every pick. That was fun, Brian. I appreciate everyone that came in and hung out with us. It was great. But I'm excited to recap and go through what we liked, what we didn't, and some of these teams.
Yeah, it was a long day 3, that's for sure. But we actually had more views combined on our day 3 coverage than we did nights 1 and night 2, which was incredible to me. And this shows you how hard the insatiable appetite for people who want that coverage on day 3 that they don't get with the television networks or really anywhere else, is hardcore about it on the YouTube. So we appreciate everybody coming in and watching that stream on day 3.
Yeah. Day 3 was fun. I mean, it was kind of wild. It was like up and down the whole time, but it was a ton of fun.
Yeah. So if you're watching live in the chat, you have a question about the 2023 class, or if you want to go beyond that, we're open to it. We'll answer those questions at the end of the show, or send us a question on Twitter at Draft Countdown, or join our Discord and send us a question in there. We'll be glad to get to those questions at the end of the show. But like we said, we're going to put a bow on this thing, the 2023 NFL Draft, which has been over now for 4 days, and we've had time to kind of look over it. We've combed through this list several times, and so we're going to go division by division, and we're going to give you, a team we thought had the best and, which team had the worst hauls from each division. We'll start, Shane, the West is always last for us. We always when we do these division things, we start last with those. So I figured, hey, let's give the West its due. And we'll start with the NFC West tonight. And, it was hard for me to not see what the Seattle Seahawks did and come away impressed with the haul they had. They had the number 5 and 20 picks. And, they did well with them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easier to, when a team has a top pick or multiple picks in the first round, right? Like, it's a lot easier to be like, oh, they had the best draft. And I mean, I'm going to do it as well here. And a lot because the rest of the team, 49ers didn't have a pick to the 3rd round. The Rams didn't have a first round pick. I do like how the Cardinals manipulated the board, but they're really looking for the future. So I go with the Seahawks too. And kind of interestingly, PFF Moo, who works at Pro Football Focus, did a study that actually draft grades correlate negatively with future wins. So the better draft grade you have out there in the media, actually the worse you'll do in the future. Basically, we grade teams high that have high picks, right? And aren't as good. That's what happens. Now, I think Seattle's a different case because they did make the playoffs but had a top 5 pick. But I haven't really liked their day 2. I mean, I thought Derek Hall and Zach Charbonnet were good values and good picks. I think their day 3 was a lot of guys that I thought could have went on day 2. So that's really where a lot of mine comes from, not just the first rounders.
Yeah, I thought they did well. And you going into the fifth round and getting old Watimi to play inside. I thought, the more and more I hear people talk about it, the more and more I think Kitty McIntosh slot receiver works for me. And taking a seventh round gamble and something like that, I really like. So we have to look now at who we thought did the worst. And I'm going to preface this by saying I don't necessarily thought they did the worst, but like I said, when you don't pick until pick 99 or whatever, it's kind of hard to get a quality haul. So that's what led me to the 49ers.
I think the 49ers are an interesting case, and I'm writing up this division for the site. I think it's coming out tomorrow, I think is this one. And I talk about this there. Like, yeah, the 49ers had the worst draft in the division, but they're probably the best team in the division. Maybe one of the best. They are one of the best in the NFC, maybe second best. So I think they really attacked their holes and their needs. Like, hey, we really need a safety. That's the first pick. Jair Brown can come in and contribute. We really need a kicker, like they really do. And so let's take the best kicker. When you have that luxury, I think you can make these type of picks where you take Cameron Latu is going to be your backup tight end to George Kittle, obviously, but he gets hurt a lot. Like, it'd be nice to have someone that's athletic who can fill that role. That's important. And I like the Darrell Lutter pick. I like Ronnie Bell and D Winters even. So I don't think it was a bad draft. I think the NFC West was, and this will probably be a theme through the night here. Like, I think all teams in the division had a pretty good draft. Like you said, the 49ers picking at 87, it's hard if that's your first pick to look really good.
Right. And that first pick, Jair Brown, you like him a lot more than I do. So that's kind of what led me down that 49ers, hole. And I think I made my opinion known on drafting kickers and punters very well during the live stream.
Yeah. You were not happy about Jake Moody being a top 100 pick. Obviously, neither of us had him on our list. So,
all right, let's move on now to the AFC West. And for me here, I went back and forth because I didn't necessarily think anybody knocked it out of the park here, but I didn't think anybody really did bad here. So, like winners and losers, it was tough for me here. This is a lot of B- grades in this class, but I went with the Raiders. As a team, I thought did well for what they did. You got a high upside guy at Tyree Wilson at a big position of need.
Yeah. Michael Mayer in the second round is pretty. Well, that was a pretty nice value, I think, compared to our overall boards.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it didn't sort for me on the sheet. The only thing I like to get Jacorian Bennett at the top of the fourth round as well. I thought Trey Tucker was a big reach in round 3, and Byron Young, the Alabama defensive lineman, to a lesser extent, but then they came back and signed a couple of drafted decent players as well. Okay. But yeah, Tyree Wilson, Michael Mayer at the top was enough to put me in the plus category for the Raiders.
Yeah, Sal happy with that. My favorite actually was the Chargers, which is
I had wrote that down and crossed it off.
Yeah, I mean, I took your guy Quentin Johnson, your number 1 receiver in the class. He was my number 2, and I think getting him at 21. I think all the receivers drafted in the first round, most of them were pretty good values. But I liked Tuli Tuipulotu, the edge rusher from Southern Cal. I think fits. I really like Deion Henley at 85, but that was a great pick and great fit. Then even day 3, like Jordan McFadden, I had rated higher than they took him. I like Scott Matlock. I think Max Duggan, I had rated higher than they got him. I think that could be a potential steal. Maybe we'll talk about him later. But I think that the Chargers, very solid draft all around. For a team, once again, kind of hitting the needs and a lot of team fits on defense.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like I said, I had wrote it down and scratched it off. The worst draft here, I've put the Chiefs down, but I don't feel great about it saying that.
I think the Chiefs had the worst draft of the league.
Really?
I do. I don't love this. Even though I like some of the players, and once again, the worst draft of the league is not bad. I'm like the Chiefs ruin this draft's gonna set them back. Like, they're the Chiefs. That's fine. I mean, I had Felix Anudike-Uzomah rated as a day 3, not a round 3 guy, not a day 3 guy, top 100 guy, but take him in the first round. I think that took a hit. Rashee Rice, I thought he would go later. I like him and had him rated around here, but I thought he would go later. And the day 3 picks are fairly uninspiring to me. I don't know. It just felt like I don't know if they get a starter out of this draft, and maybe they don't need one, but I'm not sure if they get one.
That's fair. I had Anadike Uzama at 34, and they drafted him 31, so I was okay with that. But I felt they reached on almost every other pick that they made. So, yeah, that's kind of where we ended up with those guys. Let's move on to the NFC East. And I'll start with the best one here. And to me, it's hard to go further than the Super Bowl runner-up Eagles for me.
Once again, having multiple first-round picks, I think, really helps you get the good draft grade. Like moving up one pick for Jalen Carter, drafting Nolan Smith, it's great. But I think the rest of their draft's really good too. I think Tyler Steen in the 3rd is a good fit. I thought both Sidney Brown and Keely Ringo were nice values where they got them. And Moro Jomo, I think we were calling to come off the board since like the 5th. So outside of Tanner McKee, and even Tanner McKee in the 6th, like it was about where I had him rated. Yeah, I think Eagles had a good draft. I think most people have them near the top of the list overall.
And hell, if you count their priority free agent haul, it was good.
Yeah, yeah.
They brought in some good guys there. I mean, Eli Ricks, Jaden Hazelwood, a couple guys there that we really liked through the process. But no, to me, I mean, getting the triumvirate from Georgia at the spots that they got them, I think is good value. And I like Tyler Steen as a potential starter down the road for them, and Sidney Brown as well. So yeah, I think they got some 2024 starters out of this haul. And there you go, getting DeAndre, if you count DeAndre Swift there as well as a nice addition. Yeah. So Eagles unanimous there for us, I believe, in the NFC East. And now the worst draft in the NFC East, I think you said the Chiefs had the worst draft in the league. I think the Cowboys had the worst draft in the league, thus the worst draft in this division.
They were also my worst draft in this division. I'm a little surprised. I guess I'm not really surprised. I think a lot of people don't like the Commanders draft. I actually really like the Commanders draft. I love when teams, not to divert, we'll get to the Cowboys, but not to divert, but I like when a team takes, okay, we have these 2 big needs. We're just going to hit them. The Commanders, like, our secondary sucks. We're throwing everything at it. The interior line sucks. We're throwing everything at it. We're going to make 2 weaknesses, 2 strengths. I really like when teams do that, and it's so rare. So I actually like the Commanders draft, but the Cowboys draft was a little rough. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have Mozzie Smith rated as a first rounder. Even I liked him, but I thought early 2nd he would go. Schoonmaker about around 2 early. I liked Overshawn. Even Fehoko I had rated decently high. We talked about him before the draft stream. That 4th round still is a little high for me. And then Eric Scott, I mean, some of the reasonings behind his poor testing and maybe poor play this year caused me to be much lower on him than I should have been. But yeah, I mean, I think he wasn't a draftable player for me. So the Cowboys draft was not a draft that enticed me at all either.
And the fact they traded up for Eric Scott makes that even more of a head scratcher. I'm not a fan of Schoonmaker at all. I think his athletic testing pushed him up further than his play did. I was not a fan of Mozzie Smith. No production at all for a guy who was this big freak at Michigan. Overshawn, we like him as a player, but like we both agree he's kind of undisciplined as a defender. And I didn't have Fehoko in my top 300. Maybe that's an oversight on my part, but my favorite pick they made was Asim Richards from North Carolina on day 3. And I ranted enough about a 7th round pick in Jalen Brooks. I'm not going to spill that.
Bring that back out.
I will say this though. I like their priority free agent class probably more than I do their draft class, if that makes any sense.
That's fair. The Cowboys usually good at that. And just because we've kind of bashed on Eric Scott, he's going to turn out to be like a stud.
Of course he is.
It's exactly what's going to happen.
Just looking at it, I mean, I think we both like Miles Brooks from Louisiana Tech more, and they brought him in as a priority free agent.
Right. So we'll see how that works out.
We will see how that goes. Indeed. Let's move on to the AFC East now. And this was, I really didn't love any of these classes. So I went with the New England Patriots, surprisingly enough here. I love the trade back and getting Christian Gonzalez. I think Keon White is going to be a very good player for them. I should have gotten more into Marte Mapu than I did after the Senior Bowl. And I just, that's call it laziness or just got too much on my plate at one time. I never went back to his tape. That's on me for having him lower on my board than I did. I think they reached a little bit for Jake Andrews, but I really love them attacking that. Like you said, like with the Commanders, attacking that need. Interior offensive line was a need. They draft Jake Andrews. They draft Sidy So. They draft Antonio Mafi. I mean, they really attacked it. And then they basically took a lottery ticket almost with Keishon Butte. And you're hoping that, you get that freshman year player than what he's had recently.
Yeah, I like the Patriots draft. I'm kind of with you, especially I think getting Gonzalez where they got him was pretty good. Not my top draft though. I'm gonna go with the Buffalo Bills as my best. I think Kincaid was a good value at 25. If they use him correctly, I think he's going to really be gangbusters. They could have taken Osiris Torrance in the first round. I would have been fine with it. You get him in the second. Dorian Williams, I think, is an excellent fit. Maybe a little higher than I had him, but I know you like Dorian Williams.
Feels a big need for them as well.
And a perfect fit for that need, just the instincts and the toughnness. Other than Justin Shorter was the one thing that was awful. But and I like Nick Broker out of Mississippi. I like Alex Austin out of Oregon State. I thought they could have been early day 3 guys. So outside of Shorter, I think the Bills draft was very, very good.
Part of me also wanted to give thumbs up to the Patriots just for bringing Johnny Lumpkin in as a free agent. I bet you he makes that team.
I bet he does too. He feels like a Patriots guy, and they need that blocking tight end. I mean, it's perfect.
I don't want to call this I hesitate to call this the worst draft in the division, but they only had 4 picks. So that's what led me to the Dolphins. The problem is I liked all 4 picks at the spot they made them, but it's 4 picks.
Yeah, no, look, they're not my worst draft. I like you said, all 4 picks I think were great. And now that knowing that Elijah Higgins is going to play tight end, I'm like, yeah, wow, that makes sense.
He's basically going to be Gesicki, right? He's going to be the Gesicki role in that offense, the slot tight end. Yeah,
they didn't have that role on the offense, so I'm interested to see how this works. But it'll be good. So I went with the Jets, which once again I don't think it was a bad draft. I think it was hard to pick a bad draft. I just think Will McDonald was earlier at 15 than I had him. I think they got kind of screwed over by the Steelers and Broderick Jones. Tippmann is fine. I liked other centers on the board, though. I think Carter Warren, he was in my top 100, so I think that was a good pick. And Izzy Bandacondo was in my top 100. That's a good pick. The day 3 picks didn't excite me. I guess Zach Kuntz in the 7th is worth the swing. But, I don't know. There's nothing super exciting about the Jets draft. I didn't think it was bad. Just the division as a whole, I think, was pretty good.
I like the Abanikanda pick in the 5th round. I think he'll pair nicely in that backfield with Breece Hall. And they signed my man Jason Brownlee to a free agent deal.
Oh, you go. So.
They didn't draft any wide receivers. They brought in
Randall Cobb just got signed.
Wow. They did bring in 3 as free agents, and I know you were talking about TJ Luther from Gardner Webb and Xavier Gibson, Stephen F. Austin. They brought some of those guys in too.
Man, all 3 are pretty good.
All right, so let's move on to the NFC North, where I struggled here and decided to go with the unorthodox approach to things and went with the Detroit Lions as the best draft in the NFC North.
Wow.
I was not overwhelmed with Green Bay or Chicago for that matter, and we'll get to Minnesota's obviously going to end up on the bottom here for me, but I just, this is a team that knows who it is, and they drafted as such with getting Gibbs and Campbell, and then Laporta, Branch, Hooker. I like all of those guys. It kind of went haywire after that, but those first 5 picks, I think, are going to be important franchise pieces going forward.
It's funny because I think nationally the Lions are getting the worst draft grade almost in the league, taking two positions that aren't valued very much, running back and off-ball linebacker.
And you've heard me preach that this entire time, and it's
Right.
like, but you also have to take a step back and look at this is who they are, and they're telling you that, and this is how they're going to be.
Well, I think especially Campbell and now with trading Swift, Gibbs, they both fill a big role. I'm kind of with you. I mean, I think it was solid. The Brian Branch pick, I think, really made that draft feel complete, right? Because if he goes in if they take him in the first and take Campbell here, like it looks very different once again. So they're not my worst draft. I'm with you. They're not my best draft or my worst draft. I'm going with Chicago Bears as my best. I like Chicago's draft. I thought Darnell Wright maybe a tad high, but they took their guy that I think fits the defense, the offensive line. And I thought the next 7 picks were excellent. I think Dexter was right on point. Great fit. Tyreek Stevenson, I think it's about where he was going to go. Good fit. Zach Pickens, I know we both like a lot. I love Roshan Johnson, day 3. I think he's the starter there by the end of the year. Tyler Scott, Noah Sewell, I had in my top 100, and Terrell Smith I considered for my top 100. So, and reading about Travis Bell, I'm excited about him too for them. So I think it was a good draft as a whole for the Bears. In the trenches, I love the trench picks early, especially.
I think the only thing that I love the players. It feels very boom or busty especially with the 2 defensive linemen, right? Because I think your Dexter and Pickens both have tremendous upside, but could fall. They have a very lower floor than I think some other prospects maybe. I do like Stevenson. I think he fits a need, and I'm with you. I think Roshan Johnson very well could be a starting running back for them, and I'm still wondering how Tyler Scott got drafted after his teammate Trey Tucker. I still haven't quite figured that one out.
It's kind of interesting because this Bears draft, you were talking about 2 defensive linemen, but as a whole, a lot of guys that did not produce in college, right? Yeah. But have a lot of upside. Terrell Smith was hurt. Noah Sewell never produced up to what he was supposed to. Roshan obviously didn't really have the opportunity. So it's an interesting strategy. And I feel like last year was fairly similar in a lot of ways in some of the players they drafted, and that draft was pretty good. So I'm interested to see how it works out.
I will say this. Ryan Poles adopted the Chris Ballard method here, and all elite athletes. 818 was the lowest RAS, and that was Travis Bell from Kennesaw State.
Yeah. I got brought on the Colts podcast for the Colts.com, their radio show, and we were talking RAS the whole time. So it's taken hold of the league.
It has to.
Yeah.
I mean, when that's what we're going to get to them very, very soon. But my worst draft in this division was the Minnesota Vikings. Jordan Addison, I think, is going to be great for them. But beyond that, I wasn't feeling it with Mekhi Blackman or Jay Ward. Jaquelin Roy, for where he was drafted, was fine. But then Jaron Hall and Dwayne McBride in the 7th round was fine. But I wasn't really feeling it outside of Jordan Addison.
No, I agree with you. I think the Vikings are the worst draft. I think Jordan Addison helped save it. But even at 23, it's I don't think it was great value or anything. This draft just doesn't look good on paper. I feel like you could argue it's the worst draft in the league for the Vikings because I don't see anyone, day 3 or round 3 that is going to make an impact. Not having a round 2 pick, I think, hurt. Having TJ Hawkinson, I think, will be much better than having that round 2 pick. But right. Ultimately, not a great draft to me.
And opposite of what the Bears and Colts did, the highest RAS player for the Vikings was Jaron Hall's 7.92. So not a lot of upside athletically in this class. All right, let's go to the AFC North and let's make Shane happy here because I'm going to say something I don't like to say.
Yes.
That the Steelers had the best draft in this division.
Yes, they did.
I mean, I know you have to be, and I'm guessing everybody in your neighborhood there, Shane, ecstatic
They're
about
buzzing.
the haul they pull off with trading up to get Broderick Jones, having Joey Porter Jr. fall to him at the top of the second round, then getting a pass rush upside with Benton, and then Darnell Washington falling to him at the end of round 3. I don't even know that they were going to intend to draft a tight end, and then Washington just fell to him. And then getting Herbig, and then Corey Trice in the 7th round. Big steal, was 97 on my board. Big time steal there at pick 241. And even Spencer Anderson, I don't think much of him as a prospect, but tremendous athlete for what I presume will be a potential backup guard.
Right. Yeah, it's got to be the Steelers. I think it's maybe it's a little bit of homer speak, but I think it's got to be one of the best drafts out there. I mean, Jones is my top tackle, and they got him. Porter's my number 2 corner. They got him. Keanu Benton was my number 2 defensive tackle. They got him. Like it was just value at every pick. They even traded down the pick, get that extra 4th back that they lost to move up for Broderick Jones, and still I think got excellent value. Yeah, Omar Khan said Darnell Washington they did not expect to draft. Like they didn't think they had him rated as like a second-round pick, early second-round pick, and then he was there, at pick 93, and they're like, we have to draft him. So I think it was a great draft. You're addressing the trenches to protect Kenny Pickett, to help the run game go, and hit big needs everywhere with value. And I think that's what makes a good draft. When you get value and you're addressing the needs of your team, ultimately, it's hard not to like the Steelers draft.
For the worst draft in this division, I want to say that maybe the Browns, but I like some of the players that they picked. So I'm going with the Ravens, just because I'm not going to say the Bengals. So I'm going to go with the Ravens here, although I say that with a grain of salt, because outside of maybe Zay Flowers, who I was like my number 4 or 5 receiver, I like the pick of Trenton Simpson in the 3rd round. I love getting Kayubui Kelly in the 5th. And I even like taking the shot with Andrew Voorhees in the 7th.
I have to say the Bengals.
I know. I wasn't going to say it.
Right. Like, once again, I don't think it's that bad. I think this division, all 4 teams were pretty good. Like, don't get me wrong. This isn't like, this is an F here. But it was just a weird draft. It felt weird what was happening, right? After taking Daxton Hill in the 1st round. And I guess defense was the way to go, right? You got to stop the Chiefs and Josh Allen and whatever. But I think Myles Murphy was a solid pick, a good fit. And then the DJ Turner, Jordan Battle, they weren't bad values per se. Just felt like strange picks. Like, I don't know if they're coming out and setting the world on fire and changing this defense, to me. And like the rest of the players, I think are solid, but there's just nothing spectacular about this draft. I'm not sure this makes the Bengals that much better.
I was on a Bengals podcast earlier this afternoon, and I'm not viewing this. If I was viewing this as a draft to make them better in 2023, it's a C all day, right? If I'm giving the grade out. But I feel like this is looking towards, because they know they're going to have to start going cheap somewhere. And I think up front on the defensive line is probably one of those spots. That's why you draft Myles Murphy where you do, because Trey Henderson probably not going to be getting paid long. Same thing at corner with the Awuzie. That's where you replace him with Turner. They're not paying Nick Scott a heck of a lot of money, so maybe Jordan Battle ends up being that starter before the season's over with. The only guy I think they drafted that's going to play or be a starter week 1 is going to be Brad Robbins, the punter, and that hurts me to say that out loud, that the punter was the most impactful player they drafted for 2023.
I think it's an interesting philosophical discussion about the draft, right? Because I feel like I'm kind of bashing the Bengals for this, but gave positives to the Eagles for this, right? Of kind of drafting for down the line. But it's like, if you're a contender, what should you do? Should you push the chips in and draft players that are going to make an impact so you can try to win the Super Bowl now? Or is this a better strategy, try to have a longer window? It's an interesting, I think, philosophical draft conversation.
To me, it depends on the franchise, right? The Bengals are not going to spend that money like the Eagles will do that, right? Yeah. The Bengals will not. They've never done it. They're not going to. So you have to accept that as a fan and realize this is the way they're going to do it. And you just have to make sure that you hit on the guys that you do. I think they're going to get impact out of Charlie Jones as a rookie. I think he's going to play, definitely on returns and stuff. Yeah, I just wasn't going to say the Bengals had the worst draft of the division. I couldn't allow myself to do that.
No, that's fair. It's fair. So,
all right, let's look at the NFC South now. And, we had a lot of fun. I don't know if we were making fun of him or just making good-hearted jokes, but damn it, if Mickey Loomis did not have a nice draft here for the Saints.
Yes, my best draft as well.
And I went with the Saints here, and they had needs up front on the defensive line. So they, maybe Brian Brzez's not the most productive player coming out of Clemson, but the talent is there, and he's definitely a great athlete. And I know you love Foskey, the edge rusher from Notre Dame, and then Kendre Miller. If he had been able to test, does he go 10 or does he go 71 in this class, or does he go higher?
I think he would have went higher. I thought he might have went in the second had he tested. Yeah. So I think it was a good value pick that fills a need. Yeah.
I think Sal DeVary is going to end up playing a lot for them next year because the Saints have a lot of decisions to make up front. The Saints are going to have to, they're always in a state of cap upheaval. So they're going to have to move on from maybe guys like Andres Peets. They passed on Cesar Ruiz's fifth-year option. So Sal DeVary could come in there and, take over a starting role this time next year. Jake Haener, I think, could be a great backup quarterback for them, or a cheap backup quarterback for them. And A.T. Perry, I thought, was great value in the sixth round as a big wide receiver. And the Saints have had success with those late-round big wide receivers in the past, like Marcus Colston and the like. So I really like the fit for Perry in that offense.
I thought it was a great draft. You mentioned Foskey. I mean, I had him rated fairly higher than national consensus. And I was even surprised he went at 40, but I thought he should have been a first-round pick. Attack their need. And I think the Haener pick could be sneaky. I mean, if Derek Carr falters, I think we see Jake Haener as a starter at some point in the NFL. He's not going to be, Drew Brees or anything, but I think he can be like a better than a backup. I think he can be a low end starter in the league. And
I will say this: you can bet money that at least 2 to 3 of these priority free agents the Saints signed will make their roster because they do some of the best work with priority free agents of any team in the league. At least 1 or 2 make their team every year. And last year it was receiver Rashid Shaheen from Weber State. This year they bring in Cy Barnett from Davenport, who was crazy testing.
Yeah, he's good. He's a good player.
Even Shaq Davis from South Carolina State could make their roster as a low-end receiver. And I'm not sleeping on Nick Anderson, the undersized linebacker of Tulane. Saints have their depth chart could need some help there. So they're going to get some help there with their free agents. Worst draft in this division to me was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
As Buccaneer Bruce enters our chat room.
I'm sorry, Bruce.
We're both about to say the Bucs had the worst draft. It's good.
Even though I mocked Cansey to them in my final mock draft, I didn't like it. I just didn't feel like a place they should go. I love the Cody Mock pick in the second round. And I'm even like Yaya Diaby, but beyond that, I wasn't enamored with what they did on day 3. And I thought it was just Cansey. They could have done better there. Let's be honest. They're crashing for Caleb next year, right?
Yeah. Look, I don't think it's a bad draft. I don't think I'm saying the Bucs had the worst draft in the division, but it was bad. I mean, I think Cansey can work because of how their defense is set up. Like having Vita Vea, I think makes this a better pick than it would if anyone else took him at 19 for me, but it still was a little early. I think Cody Mock is a good player, but and Bruce is even kind of commenting it in the chat, like, I don't know if he starts for them. Like, I don't think he's a starter right now for them. And you're drafting him in round 2. Maybe it's a down the line pick. I don't know the situations. I like Diaby. I like Servastier Dennis in the 5th. I like Trey Palmer in the 6th. They get some speed at receiver, but even like Durham and Hayes just feel like barely make the team kind of picks. So Yeah, I like Jose Ramirez. I like that pick in the 6th as well. But it was a weird draft that I don't think is going to have this big impact, especially immediately, which, like you said, might be kind of the plan.
Yeah, they brought in 18 priority free agents, so they had a lot of emptiness on that roster. And I do like Raheem Jarrett as a high upside chance to make that team, and Sean Tucker, Syracuse.
Yeah. The Jarrett pick is good.
Yeah.
And Tucker could end up being the RB2 if he can play. I mean, he could be getting some snaps.
I'm not sleeping on Ronnie Brown from Shepherd being a kick returner, winning a kick return job on that team.
I like Ronnie Brown. I like him too. So
yeah, but that might be what they want to happen. To be honest,
Todd Bowles loses his job. Yeah,
Todd Bowles loses his job. Let's start over. We get a new coach and we get Caleb, and we just start over.
We'll see.
All right, let's move on. Final division here is the AFC South, and I'm going with the Raz Kings as the best draft in this division, the Indianapolis Colts. And this is shocking considering how much I dislike Anthony Richardson as a prospect.
I know. That's what held me back.
That shows you how much I loved every other of the Colts 11 draft picks that they made. Julius Brents, 2nd round, Josh Downs in the 3rd round, getting Blake Freeland, and Adebawore in the 4th round, getting Darius Rush, Daniel Scott, Will Mallory, Evan Hull, all in the 5th round, Titus Leo, Jalen Jones, and even the lottery ticket punch with Jake Witt, the 7th. I loved every other pick except for Anthony Richardson in this draft class.
No, it was a solid draft. They were definitely in contention. I think it was another division with a lot of good drafts as a whole. It's like you said, I think other than taking Anthony Richardson 4th, and we both had him rated lower, though I think the Colts are an ideal situation for him to go with a good system and a running game and like everything Anthony Richardson needs. So it won't surprise me if this works out ultimately.
The problem is, even if all those other 11 players hit that I just named, if Anthony Richardson fails, this draft is a failure.
Right. That's the problem. It all hinges on him.
I also like the Emil Ekiyor free agent signing. And just to continue the Raz trend, I added 2 wide receivers to our watch list just based off Raz scores. They signed them both. Xavier Scott from Maine, Cody Crest from Sam Houston. They brought them both in.
I watched. I actually like Cody Crest. I don't think I actually ranked him, but one of those guys could make the team.
Just for the hell of it, they also signed Darius Hagans from Virginia State, running back with a 9.29 Raz.
Yeah, just for fun.
Why not?
My best was the Texans. I thought the Texans.
Okay.
And look, I think they're getting.
I get why.
They're getting bashed for the trade. I recognize they did not have another 1st round pick. I think I would be more suspect. But last year we played this game, and all the teams that we thought were going to be good who traded away their picks all stunk. So just wait till the Texans are a borderline playoff team and the Browns have a top 10 pick, and we're like, oh wow, that trade is pretty good.
The Texans drafted both of our top 2 players on our board. Here's why I don't hate the trade. Everybody is bashing the trade, saying they gave up too much for Will Anderson. I don't look at it as they traded up for Will Anderson. I look at it as they traded up for C.J. Stroud. Because if they drafted Will Anderson at 2 and then tried to trade back up for Stroud, well, the price of the brick goes up then, doesn't it? So, because you bring in so many other teams trying to trade up for the quarterback, where maybe you lessen the amount of teams trying to trade up for the pass rusher. So by taking Stroud at 2 and then trading back up for Anderson at 3, the cost to me was less.
And can I also say, unless they have the number 1 overall pick, which I don't think they will, I think it was a good trade. You're not going to get a better pass rusher than Will Anderson next year. You're just not. So as long as you're not at number 1 and you would lost out on the haul you would get for Caleb Williams, I think it's fine. I don't think they plan on being there. And I think the rest of their draft was solid. the day 2 picks, I'm not like a huge fan of Juice Scruggs that early, though he seemingly was going to go in the top 100, and I would not have taken Tank Dell that high. But I thought day 3, they had one of the best day 3s of any team in the league. Dylan Horton out of TCU, I think, could be an impact player. Henry 2020, I had my top 100. I think they need linebackers. He could even start. I think we both like Jarek Patterson from Notre Dame a lot higher than he went. Xavier Hutchinson, I had my top 100. They got him at 205, the receiver from Iowa State. And then Brandon Hill from Pitt, I had much higher. So that day 3, I think, was one of the best, maybe the best day 3 in the NFL.
Their day 2 is what kept me from putting them ahead of the Colts.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because I had Juice Scruggs at 215. And like you said, the NFL obviously viewed him much higher than both of us did and much better than I did. And the same thing with Tank Dell. I had him at 126. You had him at 165, and he goes at 69. So, I wasn't an overall big fan of theirs. I do like bringing in Xavier Valade as a priority free agent for their class as well. So, and they also signed somebody who was drafted in the first round of the CFL draft. So, that's probably where he's going to end up. Killian Zaire from Auburn.
From Auburn, yeah. Good tag.
Worst draft in this division to me, Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, agreed.
We're there. We both like Skoronski as a player. I don't know. Will Levis, obviously, that's no go for us. I love Tajay Spears. I love that pick, and I like the Wiley pick, and I like Jalen Duncan that late. I don't know enough about Colton Dow to have an informed opinion about him, the 7th round pick, but Skoronski, I don't know if they're trying to play. Have they said if he's going to be a tackle or guard for them?
I think he's supposed to be a tackle.
So we'll see if the arm length ends up being an issue there. And Will Levis, they traded back up into the top of the 2nd round to select him, which is about where you had him on your board. But obviously, I had a 3rd round grade on Levis. I don't think he's going to be a successful NFL quarterback.
Yeah, and that's fair. Once again, it was a fine draft. I don't think the Titans draft was bad, but Skoronski was a little bit high for me, especially if he is playing the interior. Levis that's about where I would take him. I'm glad they took him there, not at 11, or else we'd really be having that conversation here. The Tajay Spears pick, after finding out he has no ACL and degenerative arthritis, doesn't feel great to me.
The arthritis part, it bothers me more than the missing ACL because, hell, obviously it hasn't impacted him at all the way he was able to cut and everything without it. So,
and look, he can be successful for a little bit, but if you remember Jay Ajayi from Boise State went to the Dolphins, similar issue, was good for like 2 years and then just couldn't play anymore.
Let's look at it this way. If you get 4 solid years out of a 3rd round running back, that's a win, right?
Yeah, you're right. I think it is. But you're the Titans. You're drafting him now to back up Derrick Henry, be the pass catching back maybe for 2 years. Like, I it just doesn't seem like what I would spend a top 100 pick on if I was them. So not a bad draft, but
that's fair. So overall, who would you say was the best class?
Like, I don't want to say the Steelers because I think it'll feel like really disingenuous. Right. But I think the Steelers were, and I think the Eagles were close.
That's fair.
State of Pennsylvania all day.
I think the worst class to me was the Cowboys. I had no love for that class the more I got into it. I wish I would have had them in my column writing so I could have properly bashed them.
Like I was kind to them. I was pretty kind.
Oh, you're much kinder than me, Shane. All right. Shane, I compiled some fun numbers from the 2023 NFL draft, and I thought we could have some nice discussion. But first, before I get into all these other fun numbers, it's time to look at the Grapico podcast prior to the Senior Bowl where we had some fun guessing. And so I had 3 that applied here that I thought we could look at. We all guessed, and when I say all, myself, you, Pigskin, Paul Gilmet, and Scott Wright all guessed the number of players from the Senior Bowl game that would be taken in round 1. if we were going by prices right, we'd have all had to reset our bids because we went over.
Start again. Oh yeah.
However, if you want to go closest, I would have won this with 4. Only 2 Senior Bowl players drafted in the first round. Definitely the lowest in years that I can remember. Shane, you had 5. Paul had 6, and Scott, ever the optimist, 7 Senior Bowlers in the first round, but only 2. What do you have to say about 2 Senior Bowlers in the first round?
That's rough. That doesn't bode well for the Senior Bowl, moving forward. Like we talked about back then, used to be double digits every year. It didn't matter. Senior Bowl attempt. Now with players opting out and the underclassmen coming in, a lot of the 4-year guys aren't eligible. It's just been a mess for the Senior Bowl. Now, luckily, every team did draft a Senior Bowl player, and you had a couple teams like the Colts drafted, I think, like 6 or 7 Senior Bowl players. There were 2 teams drafted 7. So
we will get to that in just a second.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm jumping the gun on your numbers, so I'm excited.
Surprise name in round 1. I said Matthew Bergeron, which I didn't realize I had even said that, and then he was starting to get the first round
pretty
buzz,
close.
and I'm like,
pretty close.
So he was a high second round pick, right?
Yeah,
so
that was a good one.
I had him. Paul had Darius Rush, which didn't really happen. Ends up going to the 5th round. Scott cheated and picked 2, and neither one of them right. He picked Jarrett Patterson, who went in the 6th round. Was it? Yeah. And John Michael Schmitz, who went in the 2nd round, but had first round buzz.
It's getting there. That's good.
The winner here is Shane P. Hallam, who picked Darnell Wright to go in the first round, and Darnell Wright gets there. How about that?
Top 10, baby.
How about that?
I did not remember if I picked him or not. I thought maybe, but
you had an inclination. All right.
That's good.
We had set the over-under on number of Senior Bowl players drafted at 104.5. The total number was 100. Myself and Paul both bet the under here.
Nailed it.
And you and Scott went over. So under 104.5, we hit 100 Senior Bowlers taken, which I feel like is down as well.
Yeah, it does feel that way. Yeah, it's kind of wild.
Still much higher than every other All-Star game, which we'll get to in a second. And the final number here from that night, over under 38.5 players in the top 100. Only one person went under, and that was Paul. And he is correct, as 36 Senior Bowl players go in the first 100 selections.
Wow.
Now, just for fun, we also guessed if we had to guess an offensive defensive rookie of the year from the Senior Bowl. And let's just kind of look at the draft capital that was used here. Offensive rookie year, I selected Kenny McIntosh. Probably not going to happen. Shane, you had Rashee Rice, who could see an influx of balls there in Kansas City.
He got capital. That's his least.
Paul guessed Tajay Spears, which if Derrick Henry was to get hurt early, then Spears could be the lead cow there. And Scott said Roschon Johnson. Same could apply there in Chicago. If he takes over early enough, could get enough action there. Defensive rookie of the year, I went with Dayon Henley. Probably not going to happen. 3rd round pick.
Not bad.
Paul had Keon White, 2nd round pick to New England. Scott had Isaiah Foskey because, of course, he did. 2nd round pick to New Orleans.
Yeah.
And you went with Colts 4th round pick out of Tommy Watt out of Barriere.
Oh, look, he's getting him now. Yeah, well, at least we didn't do too bad on the defensive guys. They were all decently drafted.
Yeah. All right, so let's look at the draft by the numbers here, and let's look at each All-Star game, and we'll start with Senior Bowl. We already said they had 100 players drafted, and you mentioned the Rams and the Colts both drafted 7 players from this year's Senior Bowl. They were down there in numbers, apparently.
Yeah.
And what's crazy to me is the Rams had like almost no representation at the game. Like you saw nobody there, no scouts or anything. Like they did everything remotely except for talk to the players.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting. I was just trying to look real quick and see if any of them had coaches that coached at the game too, because it was all over the map this year, right? With the coaching. So.
But yes, the Rams and Colts get 7 apiece. Shrine Game gets 45 players drafted this year, which feels up to me for them. So good job by their staff this year. I think Detroit drafted 3 players from their game. NFLPA gets 16 players drafted this year. Yeah, go
ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, you froze up a little bit. So
I'm sorry.
I was filling. So go back. You said that the Lions, they drafted 3 shrine players, which is pretty impressive for the lack of them. What was next after that?
Oh, yeah. The NFLPA game has 16 players drafted. The Hula Bowl ends up with 6, which feels good for them, right?
Yeah.
The CGS ends up with 4 players drafted, and the Tropical Bowl, big 0.
I thought they could get a couple sneaking in. Actually, CGS getting 4 is pretty good. That's pretty good.
That feels good for them.
Yeah.
We heard all along that this was a deep tight end class, right?
Yeah.
9 tight ends go in rounds 1 through 3, which is the most ever in the common draft era.
Wow, that's wild. That's a lot. They were just flying too. It was crazy.
To stay with a fantasy related number, 18 running backs drafted, the third fewest since 2000.
Which is crazy to me because I think we talked about how deep this running back class is. I mean, there are guys like Mo Ibrahim that I thought for sure someone will take a chance on him, or the Chiefs signed Generic Prince out of Tulsa who had a high RAS score. Tucker, we talked about Keaton Mitchell. Like, there's a lot more I thought would get drafted. So that number is bonkers to me.
How does that affect like your fantasy projections and stuff with some of these guys? I mean, like, it's got to cut down on it, right?
It does. I mean, it does. I think one thing fantasy players need to adjust to is that running back draft capital is different than every other position, right? Like the guy like Roshan Johnson went early day 3, went top around 4. You got to consider that a player that could contribute immediately. Whereas like a wide receiver drafting around 4 is like, well, he's done. He's probably not going to do anything. I think the adjustments happening at the NFL to devalue the running back. Hey, we can pick up a guy in undrafted free agency, and he could make the team and be pretty good.
Look at Pacheco last year, right? 7th round pick.
Yeah.
Did it seem like we had a lot of trades
It felt that way. It certainly felt that way.
43 trades during the 3 days of the NFL draft. That is a common draft record.
Okay, good. I thought you were going to be like, trades. Did it seem like we had a lot of trades?
We didn't. Common draft in the 7 round era, I should say.
Era. But I thought you were going to say we didn't have that many.
43 trades. Wow. The SEC's reign of dominance continues. As for I don't know how long now. I don't know who or when the last time the SEC did not have the most players drafted was, but that continues. However, I will say this: they end up with 62 players drafted. The Big Ten nipping at them. Ooh. 55 players drafted from the Big Ten, so they get within 7 this year. I feel like that's the closest it's been in some time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
The ACC finishes with 33, the Big 12 with 29, the Pac-12 with 27, and that's about to get worse, right? Because you're about to lose Southern Cal and UCLA to add the Big 10 numbers, and the Big 12 as well, for that matter, because you're about to lose Texas and Oklahoma's numbers to the SEC. So
Big 10 and SEC numbers about to keep going up.
And hey, Brian writes about the Sun Belt every Saturday. Sun Belt Conference, best group of 5 conference for drafted players this year with 9. They still didn't crack no. And I said in my last column when I was listening to the best players, the top 10 prospects for the Sun Belt, I said I thought they could get 9 to 10. So I felt pretty good. I got that pretty close there. So maybe not the 9 or 10 that I said, but 9 or 10 nonetheless. So good for the Sun Belt there. Who do you think had the most players drafted by school, Shane?
By school? I mean, it It feels like Georgia. The depth wise, I'm not quite sure, but I'll go Georgia.
You are partially correct. Georgia with 10. Alabama also had 10. They tied for the most players drafted. Georgia has had 25 players drafted in the last 2 years. That is the most in the common draft era over a 2-year span.
Man, defense and offensive line, that really was what makes the difference.
Here's a stat that I found a bit concerning, and I think it's only going to get worse in the transfer portal NIL era. Only 10 FCS players were drafted in the 2023 NFL draft, and only 41 FCS players have been drafted over the last 4 years.
It's getting bad. You know, with like you said, with the transfer portal, I think it's getting pretty poor. And I don't remember who had it. There was a report that basically interviewed NFL scouts that they're not even really going anymore to FCS schools. Like, it's not worth the time and investment. So maybe there's an
outside of Fargo. What other school produces? I mean, of those 10 players, how many were from North Dakota State?
Yeah.
So
it's fair.
Yeah, only one player from the HBCUs was drafted, and that was in the 7th round, and that was the corner receiver from Jackson State, Bolden. Yeah. A stat that is only entertaining to me, I guess, maybe to Packer fans, but they drafted Sean Clifford was it the 4th or 5th round? 5th round, I believe.
Yeah.
He is 4 months older than their starting quarterback, Jordan Love.
Yeah, 5th round, pick 149. Well, that's wild. These ages are out of control.
Peeking ahead to the 2024 draft, and a team that we think is going to be picking very high, and that is the Arizona Cardinals. No Kyler Murray for at least multiple games this season. Probably going to move on from Hopkins as well. So really not a whole lot of identity at all on that team. But they are slated to have a pair of first-round picks next year, including Houston's, a second-round pick, 3 third-round picks, including Houston's and Tennessee's, a pair of fourth-round picks, including a projected compensatory, a pair of fifth-round picks, including one from the Eagles, and a 7th. They are loaded in draft capital next year for maybe Caleb, maybe somebody else.
Well, in my 2024 mock, and I don't think you or Brad did this, but you can see all our 2024 mocks on the site. I mean, they're picking one. I had them taking Caleb Williams, and I got some crap from some people on it. Some comments. But if you're picking one, you're taking Caleb Williams. Right. Like, it's happening. Kyler's out. We're trading him. If the Bears are picking one, Justin Fields is out. That's how good Caleb Williams is. But I think I like the approach to set up new staff, new GM. We know it's going to be a big rebuild. Get the draft picks. It's kind of what the Lions did. It's what a lot of these teams that are getting successful now have done.
I'm not sure how many teams that could end up drafting number 1 next year with their own pick, I should say, would pass.
The only ones you're looking at are the ones that took one of the first 3 quarterbacks this year. And I don't think any of them are going to be that bad. Like, I don't think the Texans, Panthers, or Colts will be that bad.
Well, the Texans won't have their pick anyway.
Right. So I think you're down to really like 2 that could be that bad. I mean, maybe it's a situation where a quarterback has an injury and the team goes down, but yeah, I think everyone else would take.
Who did you have them taking with the other pick?
Marvin Harrison Jr., the wide receiver from Ohio State.
Now, see, Brad went crazy with his. He had him taking Jared Verse and Olu Fashanu.
Yeah.
And I had them going with Caleb and Fashanu.
Okay, yeah. So you did have him taking Caleb. For some reason, I thought you didn't. But yeah, that which makes sense. So it just took Paris Johnson too. You got your left tackle, get your right tackle. It could happen.
All right, where was I? Oh, yes. The Chargers. They went. If only they had drafted Kendre Miller, they'd have went full battery here, right? They draft Max Duggan, Quentin Johnson, and Darius Davis, all TCU offensive players.
Yeah, that's kind of wild. I didn't catch that.
And finally, the 2020 draft, all the fifth-year option that deadline has passed. Of the 32 first-round picks, a whopping 12 had their fifth-year options picked up. That is not good.
Well, I think it tells you about, when we do these evaluations and rate these players. I mean, there weren't too many first-round picks that I think you and I were like, oh, that guy shouldn't have been a first-round or top 50 pick, maybe a couple. But it shows you just how much development matters, and if the fit's bad or the coaching staff changes or the system changes, I mean, you could toss it out. Like if we talked about Todd Bowles getting fired, if he gets fired, Kalijah Kinsey's probably not going to be successful because they're going to have a completely new defense that he probably doesn't fit, and that sucks for him. Like that's not great. That injuries, everything, it still is. You really need some luck to be successful in the NFL as a player, and it's tough.
I do find it, though, that the three quarterbacks that were drafted in that first round all had their options picked up.
Yeah, right. Pretty much did, right? I think the Jordan Love.
I forgot about him.
Yeah, piece was.
I'm sorry. Part of me forgets that he was in that first round.
But yeah, I doubt you counted him in the number, but they just basically
They extended his contract to duck out of having to pay the guarantee.
Yeah.
But Burrow, Herbert, and Tua all had theirs picked up. Yeah.
Rightfully so.
So, all right. So that was fun going through those numbers, and that's going to do it for that. We had one question in the chat, kind of. Nick wants to know, is there any truth that CJ Stroud was asking for Tank Dell?
Yeah, that was reported basically at the combine that Dell was his favorite receiver, and they grew close, and that was something he brought up when they called him. So hey, I'm all for it. Like now we've had a lot of those stories when the quarterbacks said, "Give me this guy," and that guy stunk, But I don't mind it if the Texans also liked him.
Right. There you go. Well, you have to think they saw him play a lot, right?
Right. No, they're close with the staff. It's a good situation.
All right. That's going to do it, Shane. Final thoughts on the 2023 draft and what we got coming up here before we head on break.
Yeah, we're hitting it up, and ultimately, we're going to have these reviews. I'm excited to see how kind of you, Miranda, Brad thinks about some of these drafts as well. And I have a couple coming out. And then, I'm working up 2025 and 2026 stuff just to have on the site for the summer as people look for it. Obviously, like way too early. I can't do the 7-round 2025 mock. I was looking at it today. I was like, there are not enough players. There are not enough players that have actually played anymore because everyone's so old ahead of them. But I'll have a 3-round mock for that, and I'll kind of get the incoming freshmen, my thoughts on those out. One thing so those will be coming here in the next couple weeks.
Yeah. Now, like you said, we got division by division reviews start tomorrow on the site, and then you'll have the 2025 on Monday. Will be kind of a break in between that. I'm going to look ahead in the next couple of weeks at some players. I'm looking forward to diving in on some film on that. Guys that that'll be underclassmen for next year's class that I haven't watched it. You obviously have because you dive deep into this stuff more than I do. But there's guys that Caleb Williams is going to be one of those guys. I've watched him in passing, but I haven't really dove deep in him, right, in his tape. So I'm anxious to see, get my teeth into that and see how he is. And Joe Alt, Notre Dame offensive tackle, is another guy I'm ready to dive into, as well as some others. So that's going to be pretty fun coming up for me.
I'm excited. The next couple of podcasts too. We're going to talk 2024.
That's right. That's right.
I'm excited for that and to get into.
We've got the Tollest of Titles guys coming on to wrap out the podcast. Dwight Shep's coming on next week, talk offense. Nino's going to come on with us, talk defense on our last show before we break away, where Shane has to go paint nurseries and stuff like that.
Right. We gotta start getting on that pretty soon. It's pretty soon here.
Pretty
So
soon.
a newborn class today before we started recording. So I need to learn. I don't like neither my wife and I are both youngest kids. Like we have no idea how to change a diaper or how to do anything. So it's going fun.
Good luck, Shane. I don't miss it, my man. I don't miss the days at all. But that's going to do it for tonight's edition of the Draft Countdown podcast. As always, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, like the videos, share the videos, all that stuff. We appreciate it. If you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen, be it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. The smallest to the biggest platforms. Share it out. Give us a good review. Follow me on Twitter at Deep Fried Draft. Follow Shane on Twitter at Shane P. Hallam. Follow Draft Countdown on Twitter at Draft Countdown, and go to draftcountdown.com where you can read all about it. 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026. It's all going to be there. Draftcountdown.com. For Shane, I'm Brian. Good night, everybody.